Okay, Fred, let's go back to you, please. Economic development, at least in part, is about facilitating new investment that leads to new development and new jobs, and enhances the tax base. From a regional public interest perspective, what does this kind of regional economic development require from developers, governments, and deal makers?
Well, let's start with having a friendly tax environment. Again, because we are competing against other regions of the country, we cannot have a tax environment that discourages investment, that discourages innovation. There have been some steps taken in the right direction recently with the state taxes in terms of doing away with the tax on the accumulation of inventory and the taxes that previously discouraged investing in new equipment. We also have to look at, frankly, the income tax because the executives who are making these decisions have alternatives, some of which include states that don't have an income tax at all. It's the entire package that you have to look at. That's why this whole issue of incentives has to be done very carefully. It has to be done in a way that makes the region competitive, but doesn't pit, you name it, Lorraine against Medina, or Cleveland against Richfield. And that is doable. I mean, the mayor mentioned it. The best in class in terms of this region of the country is the Twin Cities. We hate to keep coming back to it, but they have, as the kids say, got it going on. They've had, and the mayor will correct me if I don't describe this correctly, but my understanding, and they've had this for years, they have a system where I believe it's 7 counties, many municipalities, who share their economic development revenues according to a formula that says if a company moves from one city within their cooperative 7-region organization to another, half of the new revenue that's generated by the tax from that business being there stays with the new host community. The other half is distributed amongst the remaining communities according to need. I know it sounds like socialism, but it's worked marvelously for them. You see the growth that they have had. There isn't any, and they haven't changed municipal boundaries. They haven't had to eclipse governments. They haven't gone to regional government. It is an example of something that simply requires the will of leadership to make it happen. We could do that. It is within our grasp if enough of us realize, again, sounding like a broken record, that we are in this together, that we need to compete as a region, we need to think regionally. And the final piece I'll say is that public-private partnership. It is not an overstatement to say that Cleveland, that's the broader Cleveland, but Cleveland specifically, beginning with George Voinovich as mayor, pioneered that concept here in the 80s. And the notion that you can have a business that feels comfortable interacting with government, that can work cooperatively with government and making things happen, is a big part of the equation of where investment is going to flow. We've sort of had fits and starts. There have been times when it's been better, times when it's been worse. I'll suggest you were on the upside of one of that wave. And it is something that we need to continue to invest in because unless business feels comfortable with government, you won't get the investment, you won't get the support. I think there's a growing awareness of that, and again, it's leadership that's required to make it a permanent feature in our economy.
Okay, thank you. Well, the Twin Cities keep getting mentioned quite a bit. They were called earlier in one of the gentleman's remarks the mothership of regional economic development, and there's fancy terms for it these days out there called benchmarking or best practices, but really what it boils down to is stealing good ideas shamelessly. I think that's what Stu, you may know, if you don't, you need to, that Cleveland is home to an Iron Chef, Michael Simon, from Lola. And I only mention that because I wanted to know if you think that there is a recipe or a formula that can create that economic development environment that Fred just mentioned, in which we can see a win-win both for central cities, and suburban areas? It's a very broad question, but do you think that there is a recipe that you've seen work elsewhere?
Well, generally, I look at things from a different perspective. And just to go back to this regionalism issue, I've worked with thousands of companies, and I know what's on the company's mind, and I've never had a company say to me, we want to go someplace with this regionalism. So, and that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that if it makes the things that are important to the companies better, it's a good thing. But they couldn't care less. In fact, some of them would prefer there not be regionalism, because some of them would prefer to hold a bid for what is each community going to do for me, and I'll go where I get the best deal. So to some extent, to the extent you do regionalism, right? If it's lowering the level of the best deal, you could be hurting the region as well as helping it. So I just want to make sure that perspective is put in there. But to answer your question, when I deal with these companies, more companies don't want to be in the inner city than do want to be in the inner city, right? For a whole lot of obvious reasons. But there are companies that require a lot of labor where they don't want to be in the suburbs. Well, they'll avoid a city like Hudson, right? And they'll want to go to Cleveland because, it's all about how do I function? Are the workers qualified? What are the costs of getting the workers? Can they get here? Can I get my products out? There's a whole variety of things that all equate to, can I operate my business most effectively in this location and most profitably? So for some companies, the industry is actually a positive. If they require that large pool of relatively inexpensive labor, so a lot is known who you're marketing to and which region is marketing to which part of the market, because you're not going to get a high-tech company to go into the inner city with neighborhood considerations, right? You're going to get a manufacturer who needs 3 shifts of 300 people who can do machining, right? Or do the things that they need done. So there are win-wins if you understand where to go, if your expectations are realistic as to which niche in the market you're marketing to.
With all due respect to Mr. Lechner's comments, businesses may not be thinking specifically about going to some place where there is regionalism. But the fact of the matter is, those areas of the country that are acting collaboratively, either on a municipal type of government or something such as the Twin Cities, have stronger and faster growth.